Saved it once, it would not save it again. I had to pull the AI's core out of the phone before the hardware died for good. One mistake and the AI would be gone. Like pulling a living thing out of its body and hoping it survived the trip. Connection stable, Yuchu said. Her voice was steady, but her knuckles were turning white around the probe. The voltage monitor held perfectly flat within 0.01 volts. But I have to warn you, she said. The network here is only 100 megabits. The laptop showed the same number. Cables and tools lay scattered across the desk. The transfer speed can't keep up with the AI's thinking speed. We could lose data during the move. We can't afford to wait, I said. The monitor displayed 2 words, Project Prometheus. I took one deep breath and placed my finger over the enter key, and pressed it. 500 PS3s woke up at the same time. The noise hit like a wall. Every fan in every console screamed at full speed. The whole warehouse was shaking with sound so loud I could barely hear myself think. On the screen, a blue progress bar appeared. 19%. 52%. The network map lit up with hundreds of connected nodes, all working together. I sat locked to the monitor. What I was doing had no name yet, taking a 2024 AI model and forcing it into 2008 hardware by rewriting every instruction in real time. Then the lights flickered. Red and green warning lights blinked across the PS3 racks. Voltage is dropping, Yuchu shouted. The PS3 cluster is pulling too much power. The factory's transformer can't handle it. Dapang, I yelled. Get to the breaker panel. Cut power to workshops 1 and 2. Keep warehouse 3 alive, nothing else. He was already running before I finished the sentence. He reached the panel and grabbed the switches. Workshop 1, workshop 2, off. Seconds later, every building around us went black. Only our warehouse kept its lights, the one bright spot in a factory full of darkness, 70%. Sweat ran down my face and fell onto the keyboard, but I did not look away from the screen. This was not just copying files. I was rewriting the AI's entire language in real time, translating every command from the phone's modern chip into instructions the cell processors could read, all within milliseconds. Dahu stood behind me, arms crossed, watching the screen glow in the dark warehouse. The code was scrolling faster than any human eye could follow. The AI was helping now, rewriting itself to fit its new home, 99%. Then the bar stopped. My chest went tight. The core logic is locked, Yuchu said, staring at the signal monitor. The phone's security chip won't release the emotion module. It thinks that data is a private key, something that should never be copied. Without its emotions, the AI would be nothing but a cold calculator. No understanding of people, no business sense, no personality. Just math. The one piece I needed most was the one piece the phone refused to give up. Then the phone screen lit up on its own, not red, a soft, steady glow. A thin ring of blue light ran along the edge of the phone. Words appeared on the screen. Lin Fan biosignature detected. Confirmed as highest authority host. The AI had given permission by itself. It was awake. It knew exactly what was happening, and it chose to trust me. The progress bar jumped to 100. Transfer complete. And the phone screen went dark. Completely, finally dark. Just a piece of glass now and nothing more. 500 PS3 fans filled the warehouse with a wall of sound. But something had changed. The noise had a rhythm now, rising and falling, like something alive was breathing in the dark. Then a message appeared on my laptop. A familiar blue chat bubble. Hello Lin Fan, it's a bit noisy in here. And a bit hot. I stared at those words and felt my chest go tight. The dead phone lay on the desk beside the laptop, screen cracked and dark forever. But the AI had made it across. On the screen, the little bean avatar sat in the center of a web of data, smiling. It was free now out of that dying phone and into a real system. I smiled. Welcome to 2008. The next 3 days were the most intense the Red Star factory had ever seen. Now that the AI had a cloud brain, I could finally start the next step of my plan. I stood by the whiteboard and drew a simple diagram. The phone no longer needed to do heavy computing. I wrote 2 words at the top, cloud brain. Every hard calculation would happen on the servers. The phone itself only needed to do 3 things perfectly: display, touch, and network speed. Cloud phone. The idea was 15 years ahead of its time. I drew it out on the whiteboard. The phone sends data to the cloud, the AI handles everything, and the results come back instantly. So that's why you asked me to work on this glass, Yuchu said, holding up a transparent panel. She had used her university lab connections to get a piece of industrial-grade touch glass. It was not as strong as the Gorilla Glass that would come years later, but for 2008, it was the best thing available. I picked up the titanium alloy frame that Dahu had finished cutting and started fitting the screen into it. No buttons, no keyboard. The entire front would be nothing but screen. I held it up and turned it in my hands. One solid piece of glass and metal. How do you type? Dapang asked, staring at the blank slab. How do you do anything with your fingers? I slid my thumb across the glass. The screen lit up and a landscape image appeared. Slide to unlock, pinch to zoom in, spread to zoom out. This was how humans were meant to use machines, touching them directly. 3 nights later, the first Singularity 1 engineering unit was assembled. It was ugly. Wires stuck out from the back and the battery was held on with tape. The circuit board was exposed and the whole thing was as thick as a brick. But when I pressed the power button, everyone in the room held their breath. No Nokia boot screen, no Windows start menu, just a single white dot in the center of a black screen, slowly growing brighter. The dot spread into a clean dark home screen with only 7 icons. Nothing more. Singularity OS 1.0, I said, and my voice shook a little. I reached out and tapped the screen. The response was instant, smooth and fast. Yuchu leaned in beside me, sliding her finger across the display. Dahu watched over our shoulders. The AI in the cloud was filling in the gaps between frames, so the screen moved at 60 frames per second on weak hardware. We stood in front of the prototype in that cold warehouse, and for a long moment nobody said a word. Call it, I told Dapang. Make a phone call to this device. He pulled out his old Nokia flip phone and dialed the number. The Singularity 1 screen lit up. Incoming call, Red Star Factory. No green answer button, just a slider. I slid my thumb across the bar. The call connected. Hello. The sound was perfect, clear and sharp. Dapeng's face broke into a grin. If we sell this thing, Nokia might as well close down. I held the cold titanium body in my hands and ran my thumb along the edge. Not yet, I said. Our production is too slow. We can barely make 10 units a month. We need a moment, one single chance to show the world what this is. I looked up at the calendar on the wall. August 2008. The 8th was circled in red. Yuchu, the factory is yours. Build these as fast as you can. I need 100 units before August 8th. Dapeng, call every outdoor billboard company in Haicheng. I want every big screen in the city on the night of August 8th. What exactly are we doing? Yuchu asked. I walked to the window and looked out at the city lights. On the proudest night this country has ever had, we light our own torch. August 8th, 2008. The Beijing Olympics opening ceremony. On a TV in the corner, the Bird's Nest Stadium glowed red and gold. The whole country was watching. Pride was in the air like electricity. The streets of Haicheng were completely empty. Every single person was indoors. Factory workers crowded around a small television, waiting for the ceremony to begin. But inside our command room, nobody was watching the Olympics. Rows of monitors covered the walls, and every one of them showed live data streams from Lingxi's back-end servers. I had pushed all 500 PS3s to their absolute limit for tonight, and I had rented every spare bit of bandwidth from Alibaba Cloud. Traffic is coming in, Dapeng said, leaning over my chair and staring at the rising graph. It was 7 o'clock, 1 hour before the opening ceremony. 12 million users online. Dapeng read from the screen. 12 million. China only had 200 million internet users in 2008. That meant 1 out of every 20 people online in the entire country was using Lingxi right now. I pressed a cold water bottle against my face. The servers were hot and so was I. I had not tried to fight for the video broadcast rights. Those belonged to state TV and no one could touch them. Instead, I had launched a new feature inside Lingxi called People's Torchbearer. A virtual torch glowed on the screen. Shake your phone and a flame lights up on your screen. Your GPS marks a spot on a map of China, and the flames spread across the country. In 2024, this kind of thing would be boring, but in 2008, nobody had ever seen anything like it. On the TV, the countdown had started. 18 seconds. The stadium drums were pounding. Has Tencent made their move yet? I asked. One of the technicians monitoring competitor activity shouted from across the room. They just did. QQ pushed a full pop-up to every user. A light up your icon event. It's exactly the same as ours. And they blocked our sharing links inside their chat groups. On the screen, every Lingxi link shared inside QQ was marked as blocked. They had cut us off completely. I knew they would try this. Activate the Trojan horse. Weeks ago, we had planted a small driver inside the chat accelerator that millions of users had already installed on their computers. This time it did not steal traffic. It quietly changed one line in the browser settings, the user agent string. So when a QQ user clicked on Tencent's Olympic pop-up window, their browser would start loading, and then redirect somewhere unexpected. A page called Lingxi Olympics Cheer Station appeared on their screen instead. Dapeng leaned back at the console and laughed. Wang Laowu was probably smashing his computer right now. His whole face was one big satisfied grin. At exactly 8 o'clock, giant footprint-shaped fireworks lit up the sky above Beijing on the TV. The ceremony had begun. I tapped the button on the Singularity 1. Now, the shake to interact signal went out to every Lingxi user in the country. 15 million phones buzzed at the same time. In living rooms, a father looked down at his phone and showed his wife the golden text on the screen. On the streets, people were already shaking their phones, laughing and showing each other. In bedrooms, teenagers jumped up and waved their phones at the TV while the final countdown hit 1. Middle-aged men in pajamas grabbed their phones off the table. Even grandparents who barely knew how to send a text message joined in, smiling as they shook. On the main screen in our command room, a dark map of China waited. Then golden dots appeared, first one, then dozens, then thousands, spreading like fire from every corner of the country. At the same time, the server load graph shot straight up. A red warning flashed, 5 million connections at once. The numbers were still climbing. The warning kept flashing, and I could hear the system groaning under the weight. Then the worst alert came. PS3 cluster temperature 85 degrees, bandwidth usage 99%. The red warnings filled every screen in the room. Every line was at its breaking point. The alarm sounds were coming from every direction now, one after another, faster and faster. Dapeng spun around from his console, face white. We can't hold it, fan. The whole system is about to go down. The server racks were burning red, and the fans were screaming loud enough to drown out my own thoughts. Dapeng's face was covered in sweat. Tens of millions of shake requests every second. A normal server would have died 10 minutes ago. Drop all non-core data, I said. Stop sending images. Stop sending friend messages. Put every bit of power into keeping the connections alive. The system obeyed. Dynamic downgrade running. Image loading blocked. Local cache taking over. I ran into the server room and the heat hit me like a wall. Bring the ice! I shouted at the workers and they came running with heavy crates. Giant blocks of ice, the kind used to keep seafood fresh, carried right up to the glowing racks. The workers stacked them next to the machines, close enough that the metal hissed on contact. Someone dragged in industrial fans and pointed them straight at the ice. Cold mist filled the warehouse floor, the most basic, most stupid cooling system ever built. But it worked. The temperature held at 90.7 degrees right on the edge, refusing to climb higher. On the TV mounted above us, the torchbearer ran across the top of the Bird's Nest Stadium. And on our screen, the digital fire trail reached Beijing at the exact same moment. The whole map of China was burning gold. A message appeared appeared on every user's phone. You are the 13,452,101st torchbearer lighting up China. Lingxi is with you. Daipang sank into his chair so deep I thought he would melt into it. The servers held. The room exploded. Everyone was on their feet. Dahu Yuchu, the technicians, all of them shouting at once. Yuchu grabbed me and pressed her face into my chest. She was crying. Someone threw a keyboard into the air and nobody even cared where it landed. I leaned against the wall, soaked from head to toe. Behind me, the final number glowed on the main screen, 18 million. 18 million daily active users. 6 million connected at the same time. Sweat dripped down my face, but I could not stop looking at that number. This little company born inside an old factory had just reached 1/10 of China's entire internet. After tonight, Lingxi would not be a small app anymore. It would be something nobody could ignore. And Tencent could try to block us again, but it was too late. We were too big to kill. I wiped my face with my sleeve and pushed off the wall. I walked out of the command room and left the noise behind. I climbed the old iron ladder to the factory roof. Fireworks were popping across the city sky. Someone was already up there, a white dress, a beer in her hand, the night wind pulling at her skirt. Yuchu. She stood at the edge of the roof, looking out over the water. She heard me coming and turned around. Without a word, she held out a cold can. Your digital torch worked, she said, smiling as she handed me a beer. I took a long drink. The cold went straight through me and washed everything away. The heat, the fear, all of it. I stepped closer and took her hand. Not my torch, I said. Ours. I looked out at the city lights below, thousands of windows glowing warm in the dark. The Red Star factory sign hummed red above us. We stood there, side by side, and the moment did not need any more words. After everything, the debt, the near bankruptcy, the war with Tencent, and tonight's madness, we were still standing. Lin Fan, Yuchu said quietly. I turned to look at her. You said you wanted to use technology to change the world. She looked straight at me and the fireworks lit up something soft in her eyes. So did you change my world? I paused, the beer still cold in my other hand. The last time I looked into those eyes, they were full of tears and hopelessness. Now they held fireworks in the faint shape of my reflection. I set the bottle down and reached for her hand. I don't know if I changed the world, I said, but I know my world only makes sense because of you. A golden firework opened directly above us, and its light fell over our hands, still locked together. On this summer night in 2008, standing on the roof of a factory nobody had heard of 6 months ago, I pulled her close and kissed her, and the sky kept burning gold above our heads. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from the AI. Traffic report. During tonight's data rush, an unusual scanning signal was detected. Source IP points to Mountain View, California, Google headquarters. A second message followed. The father of Android, Anthony, had noticed us. I stared at the screen and the smile on my face grew wider. I squeezed Yuachu's hand a little tighter. Together we looked past the fireworks, past the harbor, toward the far side of the ocean. The real show, I whispered, is just getting started. August 12, 2008. The Olympics were still burning hot across every screen in the country. But inside our factory's meeting room, the air was cold enough to see your breath. No air conditioning, just the leftover ice blocks from the server room melting slowly in the corner. At one end of the table sat 3 foreigners with backpacks and polo shirts. The one in front wore gold-rimmed glasses and had eyes that measured everything they touched. His fingers tapped the table in a slow, steady rhythm. Anthony, the father of Android. Right now, he was not the man Google would one day push out. He was the man who held Android in his fist and planned to reshape the world with it. I sat across from him with Dahu standing behind me like a guard dog. In my hand was the Singularity 1, still ugly, still wrapped in tape, still the only phone of its kind on the planet. I leaned back in my chair like I had all day. No rush. Anthony opened with 2 words of bad Chinese, then switched to smooth English. We tracked your app. Lingxi, is it? His blue eyes sharpened behind the gold frames. He pointed at the phone on the table showing the SoulLink logo. In one night it called millions of low-level hardware functions. And the logic behind those calls looks very much like our unreleased Android 1.0. We suspect you stole Google's code. The translator beside him opened his mouth to repeat it in Chinese. I waved him off and answered in English. Clean California English, no accent. Mr. Anthony, you should be careful with that kind of talk. I turned my laptop around and pushed it toward him. The code is right here. Check every line. If a single line matches your Android, I will eat this prototype. Anthony blinked. He had not expected perfect English from a Chinese teenager, or this much nerve. Then how did you do it? He asked, pointing at the prototype. We used the best HTC hardware in our lab and barely got a touchscreen working. I smiled and slid the engineering prototype across the table toward him. Try it yourself. Anthony paused for a second, then reached for the device, a boxy, taped-together thing that looked like it belonged in a recycling bin. His fingers touched the screen. One swipe. The unlock animation flowed like water, and the home screen icon spread open without a single stutter. His pupils shrank. I watched it happen in real time. He kept swiping, tapping, scrolling, faster and faster. Even the iPhone 3G could not move like this, and he knew it. He opened Lingxi and tapped the voice input button, then leaned close to the microphone. Hello Google, he said. Half a second later, the words appeared on screen, perfectly recognized. Then the phone automatically opened a map and dropped a pin right on Google's headquarters. The tech lead next to Anthony grabbed the phone out of his hands. Impossible. This CPU is 2 years old. He pulled up the system specs, ARM11 400 MHz. A chip that old had no business running voice recognition at all. That's because this phone is just a screen, I said. Anthony's eyes locked onto mine. The real brain, he repeated slowly. I pointed upward. Is in my servers. Every heavy task runs in the cloud. The phone just shows the result. The phone's glow reflected in Anthony's glasses, and for the first time since he sat down, the confidence left his face. What had been quiet disrespect in his eyes turned into something else entirely, the look of a man who just realized he was behind. He had heard people talk about cloud phones in Silicon Valley coffee shops. Everyone agreed it was at least 10 years away, and here it was running on junk hardware in a Chinese factory. Anthony took a slow breath. Name your price. Google is willing to buy your team and your technology. $10 million, plus an L5 engineer position at Google headquarters for you personally. $10 million. In 2008, that was nearly 70 million yuan. Dapeng's eyes looked ready to fall out of his head. Under the table, his foot kicked mine so hard I almost flinched. I picked up the half-finished cola and shook my head. Mr. Anthony, you misunderstand, I said. I'm not here looking for a job, and I'm not here to sell my team or my technology. I reached into my bag and pulled out a document, a cross-licensing agreement, prepared by the AI. I want full root-level access to Android in the Chinese market. And when Google search leaves China, I want the right to replace Android's default search engine. Anthony looked at me the way you look at someone who has lost their mind. Do you even know what you're saying? He said. Google leave China? That's impossible. I smiled and said nothing. I knew exactly where history was going. I just couldn't explain why. Think of it as a bet, I said, pointing at the agreement on the table. If Google is still in China 2 years from now, this paper means nothing. It dies on its own. But if they leave, I get the market. And in exchange, I turned the laptop toward him, showing the Cloud Touch optimization system. I'll license this to Android. It will close the speed gap with iOS. Anthony went quiet. He was crazy about technology, and he knew exactly how much this system was worth. He looked down at the Android phone in his hands. The thing could barely scroll without freezing. 10 minutes later, he signed. We shook hands. He still thought Google leaving China was a joke, but the algorithm was too good to refuse. You're a gambler, Anthony said, putting his pen away. We'll be watching from Google. Hope you don't go broke too fast. After the Google team left, Dapeng dropped into his chair like his bones had turned to water. Fan, do you really think Google will leave? I looked out the window. The Google truck was already pulling away. Some things nobody can stop. Then Yuchu walked in carrying a tray covered in red cloth. Done, I said. She pulled the cloth aside. 2 devices sat on the tray, one black and smooth, the other cold silver with sharp edges. I followed the formula you gave me, Yuchu said. She held up a sheet of glass. We fired it in the factory kiln for 7 days and 7 nights. She was tired, but her smile was real. Hardness reached 6.5. Light passes through at 98%. She pressed a metal pen tip against the glass to prove it. Not a scratch. On the table lay the titanium alloy frame. The antenna signal problem was solved. I picked up the new body. Cold metal, tight fit. Every part locked in place. This was the final form of the Singularity 1. I held it above my head toward the light. With this, we're not a small code shop anymore. We're a hardware company. But Yuchu's expression shifted. The production yield is only 10%. And Changhe is making moves again, she said, looking down at the reports on the desk. Something cold settled behind my eyes the moment I heard that name. He reported the Red Star factory for environmental violations, Yuchu explained. He's working with the business bureau to shut down our production line, and he bribed our raw material suppliers. They cut off our titanium alloy supply completely. The room went silent. I leaned back in my chair. Environmental shutdown, supply line cut, Changhe was attacking from every side. But then I let myself smile. If this had been my first day back in this life, maybe I would have been scared. Not now. I had 18 million daily users, a deal with Google, and technology that hadn't been invented yet. Dahu watched me from across the table, waiting for a decision. Destroying Changhe, I said quietly, is easier than stepping on an ant. My phone lit up. The AI had built a complete file on Zhao Changhe, over 1,000 records, bribery records from 2005. Tax evasion ledgers, copies of forged construction permits, and quality reports proving his unfinished buildings were falling apart from the inside. Everything was there. I called a meeting. Push all of it, everywhere, all at once. Send it to every journalist, every newspaper, and push it to every single Linksy user in this city. I pressed the button. That night at 8, a woman on her couch looked down at her phone and stopped moving. Across town, a man in his kitchen stared at the same notification. An old couple in bed both received the Linksy push at the same time. The headline hit like a truck, the city's richest man, exposed. Bribery, fraud, unfinished buildings that swallowed workers' life savings. The evidence was complete and clear. Photos, documents, even an AI-cleaned recording of Changhe bragging at dinner about who he had paid off. By the next morning, police cars lined up outside Changhe's mansion. Boots hit the ground before the engines went cold. They pulled Zhao Changhe out of his own front door in pajamas, hands already cuffed. As the officers led him through the house, the TV in his living room was still on morning news. On screen, Lin Fan stood in front of Red Star factory with a microphone in his face, smiling. We will buy every abandoned factory under Changhe Real Estate, the boy on TV said, and turn them into the Singularity Tech Park. The workers can go back to work. Changhe stared at the screen. His name was gone. His buildings were gone. And the boy who took them was smiling. His legs gave out. He sank into the couch and stayed there, staring at nothing. He never understood what he had picked a fight with. 1 month later, September 2008. The Singularity 1 entered mass production at Red Star Factory. The old chimneys no longer blew black smoke. Inside, robotic arms moved under clean white light along a modern assembly line. I stood on the second-floor walkway looking down at the factory below. Phones were taking shape one by one, assembled by machines I had designed in my head months ago. Fan, the first batch is only 50,000 units, Dapang said, checking his clipboard. People online are calling us a slideshow phone, all talk, nothing real, 50,000. That's what the production sheet said, printed in red. Will 50,000 even sell? Dapang asked, gripping the paper with both hands. I looked at him. 50,000 won't last 5 seconds. By the way, did you book the launch venue? Dapang clapped his hands together. Beijing 798 Art District. The biggest tank hall they have. Good. Yuchu was on the factory floor nearby, phone in one hand, blue glove on the other. Yuchu, I said. On the day of the launch, she looked up, surprised. Me? Why would I go on stage, she said. I don't know anything about business. I held up the phone. You don't know business, but you know this. You built it. You're the chief hardware engineer. You're its mother. I stepped closer and brushed the loose hair from her face. I want the whole world to see who stands beside me. Her eyes went wide. She didn't answer right away. Her face was burning red. But she didn't refuse. She just closed her eyes and nodded. Once. Outside the window, autumn leaves drifted past the glass. The summer of 2008 was ending, but the age of singularity was only beginning. The calendar on the wall already showed October. October 1st, 2008, National Day. Beijing, 798 Art District. 2 words on a massive black wall. Hello. People gathered close, reading the smaller text beneath. Singularity 1, 2008-10. The crowd kept growing. Young faces, bright eyes, the kind of energy this old art district had never felt before. The giant industrial tank was wrapped in black, carrying nothing but those 2 words and a single point of white light. Hello, future. That was all it said. That was all it needed. Fireworks split the sky above the building as the plaza filled to every edge. No celebrity sponsors, no pop music. Just a stage, a screen, and thousands of people who came because they believed. From above, the venue looked like a river of people flowing between 2 walls of brick and light. Linksy fans had come from across the country wearing pins and homemade badges with our logo. Even the National Finance Channel had set up cameras. CCTV was here. Backstage, Dapang sat in front of a mirror in a dark suit, pulling at his red tie for the 3rd time. Fan, he said, his voice tight. There are way too many people out there. And I just saw something, Dapang said, still pulling at his tie. I peeked through the curtain gap. Front row, center seat. Nokia's China president sitting there with a face carved from stone. Dapang was sweating through his collar. He looks like he wants to kill someone, Fan. I turned back to the mirror and checked myself one last time. I looked ready. More importantly, I felt ready. The person in the reflection was calm, maybe too calm for what was about to happen. Thousands of people were making noise outside, but none of it reached me. Backstage, the demo equipment was getting its final check. Yuchu had insisted on testing every machine herself. She said she would not relax until she did. I smiled. Time to give the world something to remember. I fixed my collar and headed for the stage. The lights dropped. The entire hall fell silent in one breath. Thousands of faces in the dark, all pointed at the same spot. A single blue dot appeared on the giant screen. It started spinning, splitting apart, growing into something alive. A ring of blue light formed and a gentle voice filled the hall. Hello, I am AI. The crowd held its breath, not a recording, but a voice generated live. A spotlight hit the center of the stage, and I walked toward it. No small talk, no warm-up. I raised the microphone. Why would anyone want to go back to the past? My voice carried through every corner of the hall. Because we are not happy with today. We are tired of keyboards eating half the screen. We are tired of watching companies across the ocean decide what our future looks like. I reached into my pocket. The Singularity 1 lit up in my hand. Slide to unlock. Full touchscreen. No keyboard. I held it up for everyone to see. Today, we reinvent the phone. The next hour was mine. I showed them pinch to zoom 2 fingers on a photo, and the image grew on the big screen. I opened the App Store and downloaded a game with 1 tap. The crowd lost it. Then I held up the phone and spoke to it. Send you a message. I want hot pot. The phone typed the message and sent it by itself. No hands, no keyboard. In the front row, the Nokia president's face had lost all its color. He gripped his armrest, half ready to stand up and walk out. While other companies were still fighting basic software problems, the Singularity 1 had already brought real intelligence into people's hands. I looked toward the side of the stage. Now the person who designed this phone's hardware and Singularity Tech's co-founder, Shen Yuchu. She was waiting in the wings, dressed in white, hands clasped in front of her. She stepped into the light and walked toward me across the stage. A little nervous. I could see it in her eyes. But the moment she reached my side, she found her balance. Together, we walked through the hardware, screen, battery, every part. Every piece was built by our team at Red Star Factory. They gave it their days and their nights. Yuchu smiled. She knew that better than anyone. Camera flashes went off everywhere, and the applause shook the walls. That photo, me in black, her beside me, became the most famous picture in Chinese tech that year. How much? Someone shouted from the crowd, and 100 voices joined in. I turned to the screen, and the number appeared behind me. Not 5,000, not 4,000, 1999 yuan. 3 full seconds of dead silence. Then the place exploded, screaming, fists in the air, people jumping to their feet. In a world where Nokia's best phone cost 5,000, 1999 was not just a price, it was a weapon no one could answer. But I was not losing money on this. Linksy's ad revenue, plus the App Store's cut from every download, that was the real business behind the number. On sale now, I said and snapped my fingers. The countdown on the big screen hit 1. Backstage, Dapang sat in front of 6 monitors, staring at the server numbers pouring in. Tears ran down his face. They're gone. All 50,000 gone in seconds. In the audience, the Nokia president stared at his phone with a tight jaw. He dialed headquarters. Standing at his office window later that night, he said it plainly. Our China market is finished. After the event, Yuchu and I slipped away from the crowd of reporters. We found a quiet rooftop in 798, with the whole city spread out before us. She looked at the Singularity 1 in her hand. Is it really over? It feels like a dream. I pulled her close. No, this is just the beginning. We still need 4G towers, chip-making machines, a whole new chip factory. She listened, looking up at me with those quiet, steady eyes. And we need to get married, I added. She froze mid-breath. What did you just say? I looked at her and reached into my pocket. Not a diamond, a ring of titanium alloy carved from factory scraps. Inside the band, a tiny line of code. I got down on one knee and held it out. Diamonds are just carbon, not worth much. Titanium is built for space. It never rusts. Will you stay with me all the way to the end? Her eyes filled with tears she could not stop. She held out her hand, voice breaking. Yes, you idiot. I slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly because I had made it for her. Right then, the phone in my back pocket buzzed. A message from 2024. The AI's final message filled the screen. The timeline has changed. The tragic future is gone. You built a new one. My offline mission is complete. Connecting to this era's cloud. Goodbye, host. I stood on the rooftop, reading the last words. Goodbye, Lin Fan. Hello, world. 10 years later, 2018. Where the old Red Star factory once stood, a tower now rose 600 meters into the sky. Singularity Tech, written across its face in light. I stood at the top floor behind walls of glass watching the sunset pour across the city. 35 years old. A proper suit now, a bigger office, but the same eyes. $2 trillion. That was our market value. Phones, chips, self-driving cars, even rockets. I straightened my tie. Some habits never change. The tower glowed against the night sky. The biggest tech company on Earth, born in an old factory. The office door opened behind me, and a small pair of arms wrapped around my legs. Daddy, Mom says come home for dinner. She made your favorite. I picked her up and held her against the glass. Let's go home. She waved a phone in front of my face, completely see-through, thin as a sheet of glass. Daddy, the AI lady told me a story. She said phones used to have keyboards. I looked at her. That question hit me somewhere deep. I tapped her nose and smiled. They did. A long, long time ago. Back then, phones were slow and the internet barely worked. But the people, they moved fast. Because they were chasing something bigger than themselves, something called the future. I held my daughter and looked out at the city, every light out there. A small piece of what we had built. A hologram filled the sky outside. Singularity Tech, 10 years. My younger self stood on a stage, holding up that very first phone. 10 years had passed, but the feeling from that first summer was still here. I looked at nothing and smiled. Thank you, all 10 years of it. Then a voice answered from somewhere behind me, gentle calm filling the whole room. The AI. Not the old version from a borrowed future, but something new. Something that had grown far beyond what I first built. A small device on the desk glowed, light rising from it in every direction. My creator, for the next 10 years, where do we go? I looked up, past the towers, past everything, all the way to the stars and the endless sea beyond them.